going to touch for the University of Arizona, expectations, what they should be, and all of that. Let's get started here on Locked On Wildcats.
You are Locked On Wildcats, your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for keeping it Locked On Wildcats. I am your host, Mike Luke. All right, we got a lot to get to this show, but we are going to talk about Arizona basketball, returning players, what we should all expect, what reasonable expectations are, and all of that. But we need to start first with the most important position on the court, and a player who is, I think to put it mildly, I'm going to have all eyes on him, and that is Kylan Boswell. Now, listen, everybody knows that under Lute Olson, this became known as point guard U. Now, there is, that certainly probably isn't the case. That it's not the case anymore. But under Lute Olson, that was the case. And you had, and it was self-explanatory. You went from Steve Kerr to Damon Stoudemire to Mike Bibby to Reggie Geary in between, Jason Terry, Jason Gardner. You had Cadillacs always at that point guard spot. Now, it's definitely fallen off since then, probably not known as point guard U anymore. But that doesn't mean, though, that with Tommy Lloyd in here, that it can't return to that. And especially, too, because Tommy Lloyd runs a style similar to Lute. Not exactly the same thing, but they get up and down, they make plays, they, stuff like that. And so let's talk about Kylan Boswell. And again, this needs to all be prefaced by, I was wrong on Kylan Boswell. I thought that I didn't see him making a huge impact this year. As a matter of fact, I thought that it would basically be a kind of a redshirt year, because keep in mind, he's younger. I know the joke. And second of all, he was coming off a foot injury. So there was a lot to be determined with Kylan Boswell. But not only did he prove me wrong, he showed that he is going to be an electric performer here at the U of A. And it started across, he can shoot the three, he can play really good defense, he can get his teammates involved, he looks like a leader out there. There's really nothing not to like about Kylan Boswell and what he can bring to the court for the University of Arizona. And Tommy Lloyd has generally been pretty prophetic when he has said that, what he expects of players, what he thinks that they can be. And he hit the nail on the head with Kylan Boswell. Kylan Boswell, although he did say that he thinks Kylan Boswell can be one of the best point guards to come through here. I don't know that I see that, just because when you're talking about the best point guards, you're talking about guys that are all-timers. Your Mike Bibby's, your Damon Stoudemire's, your Jason Terry's. These guys are all consensus first-team All-Americans. JT was the National Player of the Year. Mike Bibby was obviously a national champion. Damon Stoudemire made point guard U cool. But either way, you get the gist, though. Tommy Lloyd has high expectations for Kylan Boswell, and who am I to say that Kylan Boswell can't reach it? Now, as far as expectations for Boswell, I think it's fairly straightforward. You need a guy, you're going to look for a guy who is, again, you need him to be all conference. You need him to be able to put up, say, 15 points, 5 rebounds, 3 or 4 rebounds, 5-6 assists, something like that. That's what you're looking for, I think, from Kylan Boswell. And you need him to be able to play some dog defense as well, which I have no reason to believe that he won't be able to do. But that's kind of where you're looking at with Boswell. And if that happens, it makes everybody's job that much easier. And I have no reason to believe that he can't do that. As a matter of fact, I would be somewhat surprised if he didn't. So that's where you're at with him. But again, he needs to be a difference maker. He needs to be your frontline player. And you know what? If he's Arizona's best player, that's probably not the worst thing in the world. He is a good, like I said, he is a really, really good player. Now, the next guy then that's going to start as well is Oumar Ballo, big Umar up front. Another guy you could say that I was wrong on. When he came in here, I thought he was going to be more roster filler. I thought that he was going to be a guy that, played really hard in practice, threw some elbows around, was a finished. And, maybe by the time he's a junior or senior, he gets a Gene Edgerson role. Well, he's much better than that. He is significantly better than that. And I should have known that, but I didn't know that. Ballo this year, 15-7, all conference. I think if you're Arizona, what you're looking for is for him to take that next step. You're looking for him to maybe become 17-8. Can he become 17-8? Now he does have some physical limitations. That's certainly the case. When you watch him, he doesn't always play with great balance. Tommy Lloyd has talked about it, that when Umar does play with great balance, he is a problem out there for opposing teams. And Tommy Lloyd, is many times the case, is right about that. Can he make that next step? Because he's never going to be a next level quick twitch type athlete guy. That's just not who he is. But can he continue to really solidify what he already has? And again, that would be probably, if he can make that next step, it'd probably be 17-8, where maybe you go from being all conference to maybe kind of being in the All-American discussion. Keep in mind that he has multiple years left to play if he so desires. This isn't just, so there's a lot, though, to go with Oumar Ballo, but you would love him to take that next step. Now, he was already an all-conference performer this past year. You want him to be that again this coming season. And if he's that again this coming season, along with Kylan Boswell, then those are two positions right there that you feel very good about. Then, look at Azuolas Tubelis. Zoo is an interesting guy because, yes, he's a very, very good basketball player, but he's probably closer to a role player than a star, no matter what his numbers do indicate. And what I do mean by that is that he is you watch him and you're like, okay, he's 20-10. But he's 20-10 and okay. But is it really an impactful 20-10? Is it really at the end of the game, is he getting the ball and saying, get out of my way, I can score right there? And the answer on that one is generally no. Zoo's, again, a very good player. I wouldn't call Zoo a big crunch time performer. I don't think that's exactly how he is made up. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. Michael Dickerson's one of the best players in school history. He's a much better player than Zoo, so I don't want to conflate the two. But, Michael Dickerson was probably not a guy that necessarily embraced the big moment. Azuolas Tubelis certainly isn't. I don't think that guy as well. But that doesn't mean that you wouldn't want him back. I don't view Azuolas Tubelis as an NBA player. I've never viewed Azuolas Tubelis as an NBA player, mainly because he's not a great athlete. He doesn't embrace kind of that next level physicality in there. And not only does he not embrace kind of that next level physicality, he doesn't really have that shot. Now, if he became a lights out shooter, if he became a guy that was able to, if he became a guy who was able to, be able to stretch the defense, shoot from 40 feet on in, I could see that be, maybe he's got an option or a choice there. But I don't even know with that he's going to be that, because I don't know who he defends. And in the NBA, like you always hear, you are who you can defend. And I don't know that he can defend anybody at that level. Could be wrong. But again, I think he's a great college player. If you're Arizona, I think you'd love to pay him and get him back here in some kind of NIL, maybe get him a couple $100K, come back and, maybe he improves his stock. But either way, he's always going to be able to make money overseas because he's a talented guy and his game fits in very, very well overseas. Again, he remains to be seen. I'm skeptical that he'll come back, but who knows? Maybe he will. All right, now we got some other guys here that we got to talk about. The peaks, the backup peaks right here. Henri Veesaar. This is going to be a big, big offseason for Big Henri because, again, he came in with a lot of hype and, you know, he showed some flashes for sure, but I think it's also probably fair to say that he, you know, maybe didn't live quite up to expectations. And I think that's probably fair to say. But that doesn't mean that he doesn't have a ton of talent going forward. And was what we always talk about. Tommy Lloyd said a lot of times with big men, they don't really, you know, they struggle. And then, but when the light comes on, the light really comes on. And maybe that's the way it is with Big Henri, because keep in mind, there's a lot to work with there. He's legitimately 7 foot. He's got incredibly long arms. He moves pretty well. He's got a good shot blocking presence to him. And I know this will sound crazy to say to some people, but he's also a fairly decent shooter. Now, again, he wasn't able to show that in the during the season. But he has it. Now, the next step for him, I think, is being able to showcase that, and not only be able to showcase that, but be able to also finish around the basket. And if he can finish around the basket, then I think that you're looking at a guy that could possibly have NBA potential. But Henry's got to take a big step. You always hear the cliche. The biggest step is from your freshman to your sophomore year. Henri needs to exemplify that right here. And if Henri exemplifies that, then Arizona is in very, very good shape right there. Then my other guy, Dylan Anderson. Dylan Anderson is I am a big fan of Dylan Anderson. Anybody that knows me knows I'm a big fan of Dylan Anderson. I think he can play at this level, and I think he can be a very good player. He's a pretty big dude. He has taken to weight training very well. You know, I think a lot of people were questioning how his body would fill out. He's not a great athlete, but he's mobile enough. He's fluid enough out there that, you know, he can suffice. But you know what? It's going to and another thing, he took to the coaching this year, which I figured he would. You know, he's not a perimeter player. He's not Kevin Durant or anything like that. And I figured that Tommy Lloyd would tell him, hey, man, this is what you're going to do. This is what you're good at. And he fell right in line right there, as I suspected that he would. Now, the next step, though, is to get him into being a real part of the rotation. And that's going to it's going to start with continuing to work on the body, getting a little bit more fluid out there, getting a little bit more mobile. Because if he and Henri Veesaar can both be those guys, then Arizona is pretty well set up front then. If you would have a significantly improved Veesaar, a contributing Anderson, and Oumar Ballo as well, there's a lot to like at that point. So that's kind of what you need out of them. Now, some of the other guys here, I'll be honest with you, I don't know whatever to expect from Philly B. And we're going to get to Pella Larson here in a second because, again, I think that Pella Larson's got some interesting things going for him. I don't know what to expect from Philly B. As a matter of fact, I would be, and again, I've been wrong before and I will be wrong again, but it would not surprise me if Philly B is not really an Arizona level player. You watch him, he's actually fairly well put together, but kind of clunky. Not sure that he really has the skill set. Again, could be totally wrong on this, but I don't really have expectations for him. But that's not good or bad. That's just kind of where I think where Philly B is in the grand scheme of things. Now, before we get to Pella Larson, though, let's talk about FanDuel. FanDuel Sportsbook, FanDuel.com/lockedon. All right. Everybody likes betting. This is the time of the year to bet. Yes, college basketball is over. Get it. But the NBA is here. Major League Baseball is here as well. You got some other stuff around the corner. You got hockey as well. I know nothing about hockey, but People like hockey, so that's something else to bet on. And nothing makes a game more intriguing than betting on it, having a little bit of skin in the game, pardon the pun. So again, check it out, fanduel.com/LockedOnCollege. Check that out. We will be right back with you. Thanks for keeping it locked on, Wildcats. I am your host, Mike Luke. All right, now let's talk about Pella Larson. Now, Pella Larson has gone through like 10 different incarnations here. You had the Pella Larson that when he first started playing wasn't very good. As a matter of fact, he looked like he kind of stunk. And because he couldn't really handle the ball, he didn't look super explosive, and he couldn't shoot. And then Pella Larson really started to, towards the end of his first year at Arizona, really started to take off with the, in his second year right there, which I think led to some outsized expectations. Now, again, Tommy Lloyd's been very, very good on his prognostications, but he was wrong on Pella. Pella Larson is not a defensive player of the year type candidate, all-conference guy. And there's just a couple reasons why. And the first one is you can't dribble. If you can't dribble the ball, you're always going to be somewhat limited in what you can do in this day and age in college basketball. And, when he dribbles more than twice, there's a good chance that ball's being taken from him. And he's not a great shooter, although he did come around. He was much better towards the end of the season. But there are certain things that he can do very well. First of all, he is a very good defender. He's physical. He's pretty athletic. There's a lot to work with from him on the defensive side of the ball. And he's a pretty good finisher around the basket as well. Again, because he's able to use that size, he's able to use that athleticism. And when he gets in there, he can finish around the hoop pretty well. So you definitely got to tip your cap to that when it comes to because those are two really good qualities. And I think if you're Arizona, the one step you'd really like him to be able to take is that next step where you can be a knockdown shooter. Because again, I don't believe that he's a I don't believe that that he's an NBA player, a 3-and-D guy, but I will say that if that's the only chance that he has of getting into the league, and he's got to become a knockdown guy. Now, again, he shoots a set shot, which is odd because generally when you got big dudes out there, when you got big guys out there, that is when you got guys like that out there, you got to be able to knock down the shots. We'll see if he can get there, though. If he can get into that 42% range, maybe it becomes interesting. But the thing about him, though, is the set shot. I don't like the set shot. I've never understood why he shoots a set shot because he's not taking advantage of the way that he can elevate when he gets out there. But you know what? What do I know? Expectations for Pella coming up here in a second. We're going to take a quick break. Thanks for keeping it locked on, Wildcats. I am your host, Mike Luke. All right, now, expectations for Pella Larson. Don't think he's an all-conference guy, but I do think he makes a little bit of a jump. I think that without Kirk Kriisa around, that helps him out a little bit. I think that he averages around 13, 4, and 4. I think that's somewhere that he averages somewhere around that, somewhere in that angle. So that's kind of where we're at with that. But if he could make that all-conference leap, like Tommy Lloyd has said, Arizona becomes different again. He's a very, very, he's a good player. I just think that some of those limitations generally aren't something that you can just work with at the end. So that's kind of where it is with the team. Now, coming up tomorrow, we're going to talk about, you got KJ Lewis coming in. You could have a couple guys in the transfer portal. We've talked about what Arizona needs. We're going to try to zero in on a few names, and we're going to talk about what KJ Lewis can do. Now, just remember, I'm a big fan of KJ Lewis, kid that lived in Tucson for a little bit of his time. I know he's ranked around 60, something like that. But, I will I think that he's going to be better than that. I think he's a next level athlete. I think he's going to take to coaching. I think his ball handling is going to be greatly improved. I think he's going to be an NBA player, and very glad that he's coming here. The year after that, you got a Jamari Phillips at the shooting guard as well. So there's a lot of stuff to like right there. We will get to all of that, though, tomorrow. And as always, really appreciate you all tuning in right here on Locked On Wildcats. This is we're going to be hitting you every day with off-season news, off-season goodies. No better time to back the A. We'll talk with you tomorrow. You have been listening to Locked On Wildcats.